We are going to call to order the August 5th, 2021 meeting of the Monroe County Election Board. Participating in today's meeting is Hal Turner, Republican Representative, Shruti Rana, Democratic Representative, myself, Nicole Brown, your Monroe County Clerk. And wow, this driving the car thing, I don't know. So I said her name, but for everybody listening and watching today, I'd like to formally introduce Shruti Rana to the Monroe County Election Board. She was appointed by the Democratic Party and an announcement was made, and I want to turn the mic over to her for a moment for anything that she would like to say by way of introduction and getting our meeting off to an amazing start. Ms. Shruti?
Thank you. Well, first, thank you for that incredibly warm welcome. I'm so excited to be here, and it's just such an honor to be on the commission, be here at this meeting, and serve our community in this way. So as I said, I'm just really honored to be here, and I just, want to let everyone know I'm going to be working hard for our community and doing whatever we can to ensure the fairest elections. And I hope that people will feel comfortable asking me questions, telling me how things are going, and that I'll have a chance to meet as many of you as possible in the coming months. So thank you again.
All righty. The best thing that I know to do, because Ms. Carolyn was serving as president this year, I feel like it would be completely unfair and unreasonable to expect Ms. Shruti to serve in the capacity of president. So I would like to put on the table for a discussion, and I'm happy to follow up with a motion of the possibility of Mr. Howe serving as the president and then Ms. Shruti taking over in January, because it would have been 2 years for the Democratic representative to serve as president and then switch over. And all of this circles back to our trying to make an effort so that each party had an opportunity to be the president during a presidential year. If we just did it every other year, then it was going to be the case that one party was never the president during a presidential election cycle. I'm hopeful I made that make sense, and I want to open the floor to discussion. Mr. Howe, you are muted.
I am, of course, muted. Shruti, welcome, and I look forward to working with you. I think it's going to be a great benefit to the people of Bloomington and Monroe County to have you on the board. Also, I want to say that if at some point between now and January, when we resume the normal rotation, if Shruti feels she would like to take the chair earlier, then please make it known. And this is, I consider myself just warming the chair for you.
Ms. Shruti, how do you feel about what we have discussed?
Yeah, that definitely works for me. And I appreciate you easing my transition, and that all sounds great.
Okay, well, unless someone has further discussion, and I apologize, I'm not really sure if I can see a hand or know if there's a hand up. I'm hoping TSD will tell me if I'm overlooking something, but unless there's further comment, I will go ahead and make a motion that Republican Representative Hal Turner serve as the president of the election board for the remainder of the calendar year until or unless Ms. Shruti decides that she is ready to step into the chair position, and then I will happily support that decision on the election board. Do I have a second?
I second that.
Okay, all in favor? Oh, no, we have to take a roll call vote, right? All righty. See, I'm driving the car. All righty.
You're doing great.
Hal Turner?
Yes. I vote yes.
Nicole Brown votes yes. Shruti?
Yes.
All righty, that sounded like a unanimous vote to me, and so it shall be, Mr. Howe. Could I then, in your first duty, resuming your responsibilities as president, then turn over the rest of the meeting to you, or would you prefer that I go ahead?
I'm perfectly prepared to continue from this point on.
Wonderful. Take it away.
Did I hear a sigh of relief there?
You might have.
Okay, could I ask the Monroe County IT to please give me control so that I can share my screen?
Give me one moment. All right, go ahead.
Okay. I would, for the sake of those who are in the audience, I would just like to briefly show the election board rotation that we've established. This ensures that each party gets an equal number of presidential elections, county elections, and municipal elections. And this is how it is to be rolled out. 2021, we've just dealt with. 2022 will be my esteemed colleague from the Democrat Party. And then the 2023 municipal elections will go back to the Republican representative. And 2024 presidential will be in the hands of the Democrat. So that is the rotation that we will follow, and this ensures fairness and equity among all participants. Okay, moving on with the agenda, which I just covered up. Here we go. Okay. Could we have mailed out the minutes of the June 3rd meeting to all of the members of the board. Can I have any corrections or additions to those minutes?
I have no corrections or additions to the minutes.
Okay. And hearing no further discussion about the minutes, I would ask for a motion.
I will
Roll
make
call.
them.
Roll
I will
call.
make, I'm sorry. Roll call. To
Yes.
accept. I would move that we accept the minutes. I will vote that. Nicole Brown.
Okay. And did I hear a second? I'm sorry. I'm not looking at the pictures right now. I'm looking at the agenda. So I'm not seeing faces. So having moved and seconded the approval of the minutes, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Nicole Brown says aye.
Yeah.
Aye.
So the minutes are approved. And now getting into old business. We have quite a bit of old business to take care of. I would like to ask Karen Wheeler, the election board supervisor, to give us an update on whether we have heard anything from Judge Valerie Houghton or her representative regarding outstanding paperwork and the fine for such.
Okay, so I ended up getting a hold of her treasurer on July 2nd. Her name's Jillian Kinsey. And so I conversed with her and told her that there was a fine that was $900, but it had been reduced down to $225 due to the fact that Judge Houghton's final CFA was not turned in on time. And because of how many times she had in the past had done it, she had a reduction of, what is it, 75%, must be something like that. And so I told her that she needed to have it paid by this election meeting, and that gave her more than a month. To my knowledge, it has not been paid. I checked with the clerk's office this morning and it had not been. So I had told Jillian that if it had not been paid, that the election board could very easily increase that fine, putting it either back to the normal 900 or whatever the election board would decide. It would be up to them. So it's up to the election board. So to my knowledge, no payment. And I'm a little surprised. I really thought it would come in, but so that's where we're at on that.
Okay. As a member of the board, I consider the paperwork to be part of the election law. And failing to file that paperwork is a violation of that election law. I think this cannot go unrecognized because it's been quite some time since we started this discussion. And I would move that the board increase the fine from $225 to $450.
I will second the motion.
Could I have a roll call vote, please? Ms. Nicole?
Nicole Brown says aye.
Shruti Rana?
Aye.
And I also, Hal Turner, say aye. So the new fine is imposed and will be communicated by Karen's office. Is that correct? Or,
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know. I've gotten, that was kind of put on me from the last one. So I imagine I will just follow through on that.
Okay.
Do it. I'm fine with it.
If you like, it can be a co-signed letter between you as the election board supervisor and myself as chair of the election board.
All right. So you want me to construct a letter? Is that right? I mean, it can just be your signature too. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not really, it's coming from you guys, not really me.
Yeah. Okay. If you feel that's more appropriate, I have no problem with that. I will be the signator of the letter. And that will go out as soon as possible so that she has an opportunity to clear it up before the next meeting. All right.
If I may, Mr. Howe, just for the record, I feel that the election board, we've gone to extreme lengths to give people the benefit of the doubt, to give them an opportunity to work with us. And so I am grateful for the vote that we took today because I believe we set precedent when we do this. And it's important for any candidate to understand we don't want to impose big fines. We want you to be in compliance, but we have to send a message that if you don't address it, it's going to be something that we have to revisit. And one of my biggest pet peeves is to mistake kindness for weakness. And so I really think today we needed to send a message because candidates it will blink and it'll be time to file your paperwork and you need to follow all the rights, rules, and responsibilities that come with.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is just a question, is there any precedent for not allowing someone to file for a future position if they have a prior outstanding violation?
My understanding, sir, is that it would be up to the parties to not let that candidate file if they've not cleared up their outstanding obligations. We did have someone, I won't mention them by name, but I'm sure you'll recall, we did have someone who was able to run because the party did not address the fact that she had never cleared up her fines.
Okay.
So that's how I understand it to be, but I'd be happy to look into it further if you think that there's something that we need to do as far as that.
Okay, so extending that a little further, it may be appropriate for the chair to copy the chair of the Democratic Party on this action so that they're aware of the escalating potential.
Sure.
Okay, good. And the next one is Mr. Ryan Maloney, who has an outstanding fine of $100.
Oh, my goodness. So I took that one on trying to get a hold of Mr. Maloney. He called after the office closed and left me a voicemail and did not leave a number. I was able to find, thanks to Sherry, somebody who knew him And I reached out to that person and said, I'm trying to reach out to Mr. Maloney. I'd like for him to contact me. Would you mind to get a hold of him and tell him that the clerk would like to speak with him? And so he didn't leave a return number. He didn't try to call me back. Absolutely nothing. I think he's long gone from this and is not likely to run for office again in Monroe County, which may be why it's not important to him.
Right, but the requirement to file this is a state requirement, I believe, not a local or county requirement. So he is still on the hook, and we still need to pursue an attempt to get after him. But this time, I think we do need to, again, set a precedent of not allowing people to ignore the requirements of the state in filing this paperwork on time and correctly. So I would entertain a motion that we increase the fine on this to $200.
I would second that motion.
It's actually already $200.
Yes.
Oh, the $100
Oh, it's already
fine.
at 2?
It's
Yeah,
$100 fine and $100 penalty. So-
already, correct.
Okay, well, I'll call you and raise you 2.
I don't play poker, but I will second your motion.
Okay, very good. So his new fine will be $400, and we will pursue every avenue of communication to get a hold of him.
So I apologize. So we did a motion in a second, but did we do a vote?
Yes,
We
yes,
did.
we need to do a vote.
Okay.
And could I, Nicole, could I have your vote, please?
Nicole Brown's vote is aye.
And Shruti Rana, could I have yours, please?
Aye.
And Hal Turner, chair, votes aye. Okay. That closes the outstanding fines and board action status. I would like to move on to the Salt Creek Township Board paperwork that was outstanding. And that was something that Karen Wheeler, the election supervisor, was going to follow up on.
So that's good. That's good news. He's taken care of everything. We've got everything signed and we are good. Thank you guys at Salt Creek. It really makes a difference. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you. Thank you. The next issue is a potential voter fraud allegation that was raised against a member of the Monroe County voting community. Just to remind everyone, there was an apparent false registration made. And so we had started the process of an investigation to determine whether this was in fact a violation of state election law, which is usually a Class A misdemeanor, but could be a Class F felony, I believe. Anyway, Karen, do you have any update from your contacts on where the investigation process is?
Yes, a little bit. The state police detective contacted me and he came here and he had an interview with me. And of course, they don't really tell you a whole lot, but what I understand is that they're still collecting information and perhaps there's at least one more interview that I understand that needs to be done, but the state police won't be telling me any more follow-up. And then when they're complete with that, then they'll turn it over to the county prosecutor. And then it's up to them, up to the county prosecutor to what they will do for charges or not.
Okay. Okay. Karen, could you request of the county prosecutor's office that they notify us when they're contacted by the state police?
That would make sense.
Yeah.
I'll attempt to do, I'll do it and then I'll see if they will follow up on that.
Okay, great. That'd be great if they would let us know. Okay. Again, Karen, the statewide voter list maintenance card mailing went out to every registered voter, I believe, in the state. Are we still seeing a lot of returns from that, of people correcting their registrations or removing the registrations or doing whatever?
At this point, the highest point we've had is perhaps like 900 of those cards coming into our office, and then we doing the follow-up and handling that. Voter Reg has been doing a great job on that. It definitely has slowed down. On Monday, we had 24 of them. Perhaps on Tuesday and Wednesday, there might have been 0 or very few. I don't know exactly, but it's not, it's a small amount. So we're getting down there. They'll keep trickling in for a little while, but it's been successful and it's going very well. And the gals in the office are doing a great job.
Yep. Terrific. Terrific. Okay, so we will, it looks like the process is perhaps winding down in its intensity, but the process still continues. So we'll keep this and touch base with you next month to see how that process is going. Thank you. I'd like to call on Tree now as I bring up a copy of the election law violation sheet. The election law violation sheet is the result of an incident we had during the last election where we had a party who clearly violated election law in the early election office and was notified of such, but we failed to get the person's name and contact information. So we're not able to follow up with the election law process on this. We, to correct that, have come up with a procedure which we thought would close that hole in our process and allow us to comply with the law and to help our voters comply with the law once a violation is noticed or suspected. So I'd like to open that up and ask Tree to maybe walk us through this. I'm not hearing you, Tree. Yeah, we lost your audio. Nope, not there. All right. Sherry, could you help?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear
Okay,
you.
all right. Actually, what you show on the screen, if you can hear me, that's great. What you show on the screen was our initial draft of going through the Indiana code and defining potential violations of electional law that might occur during in-person voting. And we actually heard back yesterday, I think, from our attorneys, because they had reviewed this after the board reviewed it, and the attorneys got back to us yesterday, and they've actually expanded the list. So there's a bit more feedback that I would like to propose to the board, but I'll do it after the meeting. Generally speaking, very few of these violations that we drafted were of concern. In fact, legal team have expanded it a bit. If you go to the next, that's page 1 and 2, Hal, if you go to the next couple of pages, the legal team didn't make many changes at all. So what I would like to do is, we do have feedback from the attorneys. I would like to take that feedback and communicate it back to the board, because we don't need this right away until we start voting, in 2022. And so you can see what the attorneys have proposed as an alternative, and then what, at least for what it's worth, my thoughts on it. But we're making progress on it. They were pretty happy with it, although the attorneys kind of said, do we really need this form? That was his initial question. But if we need it, which I think the board feels pretty, has been pretty clear that this would have been a useful detail to have had in the general last year, that I'd like to provide some detail to the board and everyone regarding feedback from the attorneys.
Okay.
Very, very little, but some.
Okay. So to be
Making
continued.
progress.
Yeah. All right. To be continued.
Yeah.
This will stay on the agenda under old business, and we'll revisit it during perhaps some emails or a work session
Yeah.
between now and then. Okay, very good. Thank you. All right. 1 second here while I get back to the agenda. Okay.
You kind of skipped E from Nicole if you wanted the Secretary.
Yes,
of
I
State
did
legislative
skip
update.
Nicole. My apologies, Miss Nicole. My most sincere apologies for skipping over your section regarding the Secretary of State and the legislative update.
Mr. Hal, I have no issue with acknowledging that I am small fries in the room. I'm just,
No, no.
it is your world, Mr. Hal. I just feel fortunate to live in it. So thank you so much with respect to the clerks conference and legislative updates. First, I have to tell you how amazing it was to come together in Indianapolis with all of my clerk brothers and sisters. It was at a time where we weren't as concerned about the numbers going up as we are right now as far as COVID. So I am honored to tell you that each of the 92 counties in Indiana had representation from their clerk's office. It was amazing to be a part of that. And we had a good few days of quite a bit to discuss. Much of it isn't going to be as germane to people on the election board meeting, State Board of Accounts. You have a number of guest speakers over the course of 3 days, and State Board of Accounts came down and you can imagine that they talked a lot about going forward and what will be acceptable to State Board of Accounts as far as verification of expenditures and what counts and what doesn't count and what money, what funds you can take it out of and things like that. So we had that. The Indiana Election Division did come and offer the agenda as far as where we're going for statewide voter list maintenance and all of the things that we are doing up until it's time to prepare for an election. And so it was wonderful to see Brad King, Angie Nussmeier. The Secretary of State did come to the clerks conference and gave an introductory speech, as did some of her entourage came with her. So I don't have a lot. It was just a lot for all of the clerks, but I don't have a lot that would be meaningful for the election board, which leads me into legislation, because that I can shed a little more light on. It's been my honor and privilege to have chaired the legislative committee for the Association of Indiana Counties and the Clerks Association. My co-chair left me to take a job with the Secretary of State, and I miss him every single day, but he set me up in good shape, and I am excited because Kathy Williams, who was a former state representative, but she is the Hamilton County Clerk, will now serve as my co-chair. And we look forward to getting some exciting things done for the Clerks Association and things that make common sense for all 92 clerks. That's going to be exciting, and I look forward to working with her. I went ahead and printed off a list of the bills that we worked on. Even through COVID, we were testifying at the State House and through snowstorms and whatnot. And so we had a good session and got some good things done. I'm going to tell you the name of the bill, and then I will highlight the things that made the most sense to me to share with the election board and any voters who might be watching. I am happy to go into it further if you have questions, but I have to tell you, I brought the booklet that I got from the Indiana Election Division, and it might take me a while if you have a more complicated question. But the first bill that I want to tell you about is House Bill 1365. This was a bill submitted by Chairman Wesco, and the things that I thought might be of interest to you would be that this bill provides that ballot proofs now be made available for inspection 67 days prior to the date of the election. It permits a county election board to authorize the use of absentee ballots by voters when a state disaster emergency is declared or a county disaster emergency is declared within 11 days of an election. It requires that an absentee ballot application requesting for an absentee ballot to be sent by mail or by traveling board submitted to the county using the statewide voter registration system must include a telephone number to contact that applicant. It permits the applicant to include their electronic mail address and provides that if an application for the absentee ballot is denied, the county election board must provide the voter in writing with the reasons for the denial of the application.
Okay, one question regarding that written notification. Does that include electronic communication?
So I'm reading directly from the updates, the legislative update. It said written application, written notification. It did not say in what format.
Okay.
I know that I can remember during one of the elections, I can't remember if it was the primary or the general, that we each divvied up. We wanted to get them plenty of notice. And so I took letters from voter registration office and drove them to people's homes. I think we might have had 10 of them. So each of us took 3 or 4. And I just drove them to make sure that they got it immediately. We weren't worried about at that point about getting it through the mail because we couldn't count on the mail, with the pandemic and priority being people's medications and things. So because we want everybody to vote, we drove those out to people's homes, and I'm happy to continue doing that so that people get as much notice as possible that there's an issue so that they can get it corrected and are able to cast their ballot absentee. Thank you.
Okay.
Did you have, I'm sorry, did I see a hand? Did you have another question, Mr. Howe?
No, I did not.
Okay, then I'm gonna read one more paragraph from this bill and then move on to the next one.
Okay.
Again, we're referring to House Bill 1365. It provides that with certain exceptions, an individual must be a citizen of the United States to be permitted in the polls during an election, and it authorizes the Secretary of State to grant exceptions. Authorizes a voter board visiting a voter with an illness or injury, or a voter who is caring for a confined person at a private residence to use an electronic poll book. Specifies the procedure when a voter leaves the clerk's office or satellite office without casting the voter's absentee ballot for the vote to be cast by an absentee voter board. That was an issue in another county. If somebody walks away without hitting the vote button, what do you do? And we already had it that on election day, a bipartisan team could go ahead and hit that button together if they made every effort to get a hold of the voter, but could not get the voter to come back and hit that final button. This just lines that up so that you can do that during early voting and on election day, and that bipartisan team can carry that out if the voter, for whatever reason, is unable or unwilling to return and finish casting their ballot. And finally, specifies the requirements for the timing and security of the bipartisan initialing of absentee ballots, and increases the amount of time that a voter has to vote in the primary election from 3 minutes to 5 minutes, and the amount of time to vote in a general, municipal, or special election from 2 minutes to 4 minutes. Those are the big highlighted. There's a lot more to the bill, but those are the ones that I thought would be beneficial to the community.
Mhm.
Moving on to House Bill 1485, also authored by Representative Wesco. It defines breach of peace and law enforcement officer for the purposes of election law, specifies to whom a watcher must report any violation of election law, and amends the definition of electioneering and adds language prohibiting making verbal statements, displaying certain written statements, or the display of support for the approval or defeat of a public question, and electioneering before election day in specified locations. Makes it criminal trespass for a person to enter or refuse to leave a polling location after having been prohibited entry or asked to leave by an election officer or law enforcement officer acting on behalf of an election officer. So once again, we wanted to make sure that some language lined up election day with early voting. We had one county in Indiana where the clerk had difficulty because there was some electioneering within the chute. And that person who was electioneering was savvy enough to point out that it didn't apply to early voting. And sure enough, that the language read that way. And so on behalf of that clerk, and then just for common sense, we went ahead and testified as a clerks association on that bill. Moving on to Senate Bill 260. This is officially known as the clerk's bill. These were all of the things that the 92 county clerks were asked what would make it easier for you. And so I want to highlight the ones that came out of that. It allows a person who is 16 or 17 years of age to serve as a precinct election officer without the written approval of the school principal if school is not in session on election day. It provides that a precinct may be established with fewer than 600 active voters if establishing the precinct would avoid establishing a split precinct. That was a huge, huge deal in Allen County. It also provides that a school that is used as a polling place on election day may conduct a virtual instruction day for students who attend school in the building, or conduct an in-person instruction to students who attend school in the building if certain conditions are met. It establishes a procedure for casting a voter's ballot at an early voting site by election workers if the voter does not complete the procedures for casting the voter's ballot. Provides that provides that absentee ballots may be scanned but not tabulated not earlier than 7 days before election day. That is going to make a huge difference in Monroe County, but especially anybody still using paper ballots. It catches up paper ballot counties to electronic machine counties. The technology just had not caught up with what we are able to do and when. And so this was a very good compromise. I'm very grateful Senator Walker carried that bill for us. I'm very grateful to him because it allowed for us to have some compromise and get that into the statute. And I am moving on to Senate Bill 398. The ones that stand out from there are providing notices that provides that notices of elections must be published not later than 21 days before election day. Under current law, those notices must be published 10 days before the date of an election. Prohibits counting a ballot that is deposited in a drop box or container that is not under the physical control and supervision of the county election board. Requires locations where absentee in-person voting occurs to meet accessibility standards that apply to polling locations on election day. Did I make that make sense? Do you need me to say that one again? Okay. And then extends the time in which an absentee ballot must be received. This is one of my favorites, on election day from noon to 6 p.m. That is huge. If they were coming in, we in Monroe County are incredibly fortunate. Our mail person he kept coming back to us and bringing us ballots because his colleagues, if they realized that they had a ballot, they were finding him, and he knew we had that noon deadline, and we were so fortunate. I did send a letter, attaboy letter to the United States Postal Service for our mailman. We were lucky. So extending that until 6 o'clock is incredible and will allow us to be able to count more ballots. And so I know the voters will be excited about that. And finally, allows all counties to be able to open their absentee ballot envelopes by machine. At the time before the law was passed, only Marion County could do that. And clerks did ask for special dispensation during the pandemic because our numbers increased exponentially with respect to for the people who voted by mail, elected to vote by mail during the pandemic, so they didn't have to get out. So that's a huge, huge thing. Now, you can't really buy that cheap letter opener because that's what slices your ballots in half. So you do kind of have to get the Cadillac to ensure that you have your ballot intact when you get it out of that envelope. But that too is huge, in addition to extending that time until 6 p.m. So those were the things that I brought today. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to try to answer. But you'll have to bear with me as I look through my book. Everybody looks happy or ready for me to stop talking so we can end this meeting. I don't know which.
Yeah, I hear no questions.
Okay, well then that's me, Mr. Howell. I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, thank you very much. So those bills were HB 1365, HB 1485, SB 260, and SB 398. That's terrific. That'll give us
Correct,
a
and
chance.
the bills are very long. Each bill can look like a book.
Yeah.
So a lot of times I'm toting those books back and forth between Indianapolis and Bloomington. So if someone thinks I didn't cover something, or, well, I thought that bill also had this, you'll want to read the whole bill. And might I recommend a very nice beverage of your choosing as you sit down to read that book.
Yeah, we greatly appreciate your fine summary of those bills. Having worked in government, in federal government for 10 years, I sympathize with you. I know what it's like to read a bill, and it's not always the first thing I choose when I'm looking for fun. But thank you. That was a great summary. Okay, moving on to the next item. Our Board of Elections policy on public meetings. And Sherry Morris is going to speak to that. I will bring that up on the screen.
You can if you want, or I'll just briefly summarize it.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to it. Oh,
It's okay.
I know what happened to it. Sure. Let me see. There it is.
Okay, now I can't see anything, but can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I just thought I would briefly summarize. Of course, we are now back under a restriction to only meet on election board meetings and other meetings via Zoom. But at some point in our life, we are going to be able to hopefully do in-person meetings again with the election board. And the county commissioners have requested all boards in the county, which includes the election board, to prepare a written policy regarding hybrid meetings, meaning they can be attended in person or in real time by anyone electronically. So I thought we're drafting at this point a policy regarding how the election board would function. Everything's in draft form right now, but I thought I would quickly review those many words that are on the screen by Hal. Typically, election board regular meetings are held in the Nat U Hill Conference Room, and that room is currently being equipped to allow for electronic attendance in real time when we can meet in person again, which would also then allow for meeting via Zoom real time and participating in meetings as desired. The policy is going to certainly plan to use hybrid meetings when we can. Like now, the agendas will include Zoom contact information to attend those meetings electronically. It does apply really only to regular election board meetings with exceptions. I mean, it's possible the Nat U Hill room might not be available, or there might be technology glitches or work sessions. But those are rare. Most election board meetings are the regular meetings, so the hybrid attendance will be possible. Public comments, like now, will be welcomed at relevant times throughout the course of an agenda on topics, of course, when the board requests it. And near the end of the meeting, we almost always request any other public comments that will be possible either in person or via Zoom. Individuals making a public comment are always asked to state their names, and when possible to supply a phone number or contact information of some sort in case we want to follow up afterwards.
Right. Sherry, one comment?
Yes, please.
In the event we are not having a regular meeting, which is not on a pre-planned Zoom session,
Yes.
for instance, during periods when we have to react quickly as a team,
Yes.
those meetings also have minutes which will be made available to the public as soon as possible. There are no secret meetings. We do not meet offline on a dark street corner in the dead of night. We don't even communicate to each other unless it is in a structured format. If it has anything to do with election business, we don't make election policy in secret. We make sure that that is always done with the public knowledge. If we have to make a sudden decision, we do that, but we will always make sure that the public's aware that we have done it. We don't even call each other on the phone. If we're going to communicate between the three of us, or if we need to communicate with two of us, then we will copy the third person and make sure that there is documentation that that communication happened. Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
All
Howell.
true. Yeah.
Not all true. And Mr. Howell, I have to say, if you were wanting to have those secret meetings in, dark alleys, the clerk goes to bed at 8 o'clock. So I am not available for secret squirrel meetings.
Okay. Duly noted. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Sherry.
That's fine. As now, all voting by the election board is done by roll call vote, and that's part of the draft hybrid meeting policy. And of course, in-person attendance, when it's possible, by board members is preferred. The county is suggesting, and the election board is perhaps likely going to adopt what's called the consecutive 50 rule for election board members, meaning it has two parts, meaning that generally a board member should not attend electronically, not in person, but electronically for more than 2 consecutive meetings. And a board member should attend at least 50% of the board meetings in person. So that's the consecutive 50 rule that applies to board members. The public is always welcome electronically or in person once we can do our hybrid meetings. And like now, all meetings generally, when available, will be recorded by the Community Access Television Services team, which allows for public viewing of meetings at convenience. The draft policy is being reviewed now by the board and will be finalized. We thought it would be sooner, but we're back into Zoom meeting mode again. So it'll be finalized when hybrid meetings are possible so that we have electronic attendance for those who want to attend and in person when we can all look at each other face to face in our meetings.
Okay. And that's it?
Oops, sorry. It's in draft form. We can tweak it a little bit and it's
Okay.
something the board can adopt whenever
Yeah.
we can get into
Okay.
this.
I would like to ask the members of the board to take a look at this policy, submit any corrections or additions that you might have to this policy to the other members of the board, so that we can have some informal communications on this, and that we will introduce whatever changes may have developed within the next month at the next meeting, and we will vote on the adoption of this policy. Okay. That's my intent anyway. Any concerns or issues with that?
Not for me. I've had an opportunity to look it over once. I'd like to have a more in-depth look before we would come together and make decisions. But the draft, I think, is phenomenal, and I don't see there's going to be very many updates or changes.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a tremendous piece of work. I want to thank Sherry for her work on this, and I want to thank everyone who contributed to this policy. I think it's important, especially in today's environment, where we make sure that we tell people how we conduct business, so that they can determine whether we are trustworthy or not of the profound responsibility they've placed upon us to do this. I don't consider anything more important than our free and easy right to vote.
I think that is so great that the county is encouraging boards to make sure that electronic real-time opportunities to continue with the Zoom so anyone can attend and anyone can have input live. They're really encouraging boards to do that, and the election board is definitely open to that, which is, I think, great for the public.
Yeah, democracy cannot flourish in the dark. Okay. Is there any other old business that anyone would like to bring up?
Was there anything on G?
I was going to say, I'll just take a moment. With respect to future election logistical needs, I am aware that the commissioners came on to one of our last meetings and requested specific information regarding our space needs. This has been something that we have attempted to address with the commissioners over the years that I have been clerk. And we are incredibly grateful for what we have gotten so far. Our ballot room being a perfect example, the ability to expand the space and allow us to have more room there at Election Central. And we did certainly express our gratitude in real time to each of the commissioners, but the needs continue, and the pandemic magnified the needs that we already had. And so it had been my hope, because I've been to a previous work session, to begin with at their public meeting. But I was advised by the commissioner's office that I will need to start with the work session again. So I want to let the board know that I have submitted requests to appear at their August 11th work session, which follows their public meeting. So I don't know how long their public meeting lasts, but immediately following, I will be participating in the work session, and that is on August 11th. And then I have simultaneously, I submitted a request to attend their formal session on August 18th, 1 week later, because that meeting allows for public input and comment. I don't believe that the work session, it is recorded, but I don't believe that it allows for public comment. And so in that spirit, I want to make you aware, Mr. President, that I will be requesting that we recess from this meeting, not adjourn, for a number of reasons. But the first being so that when the election board comes back together, as I hope you will, in support of my presentation to the commissioners, then we don't have to notice that we're meeting because we recessed rather than adjourn.
Yes.
And then also, should we have any other business, I know that you are aware, Ms. Shruti will become aware of the fact that we are going to have to meet to talk about the election budget prior to going before the council for budgets. And so again, if we recess, then we can come together without having to notice a meeting because we did not adjourn. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. My apologies. Again, I skipped over your item on the agenda.
Small fries, I'm small fries.
Yeah, was not intentional. I'm working with a screen copy rather than a hard copy. And usually when I have a hard copy, I can check things off and keep track of where I am on the agenda. So my apologies for that. Is there any other old business?
I might have one here.
Okay.
It just is an update, but I just wanted to give the update that we did get the Easy Vote app program. And if any of you remember that, that is for candidates filing. So everything of the candidate filing forms are done through Easy Vote. We are all learning it. It's an interesting learning procedure. We have to know everything about it. The candidates, I believe it's going to be very simple for them. And what I'm seeing, they're going to love it. And that way you can file anytime, whenever it's the appropriate time for them, at home, anywhere you are, on your computer, and electronically. You won't have to miss that noon deadline for that day, whatever it is. Of course, we have to be learned enough to be able to teach them of how to do it when they call in and have questions. So the voter registration ladies, Laramie and Tina, are learning it. Of course, myself and Tree and Sherry. Did I miss anybody? So I thought we were doing it way ahead of time, but actually we're not. It's taking us some time, and he gives us a class. We're going to have at least 3 classes. We've had 2. We've got the 3rd one scheduled. We can have another one if we need it. And so then there's basically homework, and we do it. And then the next time we get back together, we have questions or whatever, and then we have another learning time. So it's going really well. And so I'm very happy with it. And I think the candidates are going to find out that they're going to like it.
Okay, that is terrific. And now, will this notify them automatically when they have paperwork that's due?
Yes.
So it has what I call a nag mode.
I don't know what that is, but I know there's emails that will be sent out. We set them up, we set the wording, and there's a lot of things that automatically remind them. And if they don't do it, they get another reminder. It's going to be really efficient.
That's great. That's great. And maybe we'll be able to totally eliminate fines because everyone will find it so easy to get their paperwork in on time that we won't have to fine people.
Oh, bless your heart.
Yeah.
It's a good thought.
It's not something we do with pleasure. That's terrific. Thank you. Is there any other old business? All right, then we shall move on to new business and back to Karen Wheeler on the Richland precincts. You had a request.
Yes, we had previously taken all of Richland 1 through 8. We didn't do anything with 9. 9's kind of a little whole thing of itself. But Richland 1 through 8, we split every one of them to town and county. And there was a reason that we did that. At this point, we really don't need Richland 1, 2, and 8 to ever be county. As probably most of us know, that Ellettsville does have a tendency to annex certain areas, but this is town and they're never going to make it county. It's always going to be town. And if I can be able to get those back to only town, Richland 1, Richland 2, and Richland 8, that will just eliminate 3 different ballot types that I will not have to make them. And there should never be a reason for that ever to happen. So if I can get approval of that, then I can move forward on that. It should be a pretty simple procedure of dealing with that through SVRS.
Okay. What repercussions might happen from doing this? Is there any case you can think of in the future where this might make life more difficult for the voters or for the administrative personnel in the vote center?
I have thought about that and I cannot come up with anything. It just seems like it is 3 ballots that I have to make, that they're always going to be the same. Well, they would be different ballots.
Okay.
We will never use the Richland 1 county. It'll never happen.
Okay.
Or 2 or Richland 8.
If things change in the future, is it possible to go back?
Absolutely.
Okay. In that case, I would like to ask if there's any discussion from my colleagues.
I have nothing.
No?
I don't have anything.
Okay. Okay, then I would like to ask for a vote, aye or nay, on allowing this to proceed. Start with Nicole.
Aye.
Shruti,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. Okay, that is done. Now, there was also a carryover item from the one of the previous meetings regarding re-precincting. You mentioned that you had a re-precincting review due August 11th. Could you clarify that for us, Karen?
Yes, so the state is saying if Monroe County wants any re-precincting done, I have got to give them a survey for next Wednesday at noon. And so it was a little overwhelming to think about all the choices and things and decisions that need to be made. It's not political at all. It's just the idea of, is there things that need to be changed? Are things up to date? Are they not up to date? And pretty much saying, if you have any thoughts of doing it, you need to put this in, because even if you don't want to do it later, you can just drop it, but you have to have this in by the 11th. So I contacted Tron as the surveyor, and through that, we ended up having a meeting with Tron and the GIS coordinator. His name is Jared, and Kevin from Ellettsville, from the town of Ellettsville, and also Laura from the city. And then also Lee Baker, our attorney. So we had a meeting and they all put their heads together and we came up with a pretty good plan. I involved the voter registration office. They went through and looked at all these maps and just seeing if the boundaries lined up with the data census. We have some information, just very little, but they're called tagger files. And so they checked all of those and marked those, and then Jared ended up taking that. It helped him tremendously because it's very, very time consuming. I found out that the city had done more of this work 10 years ago, and for whatever reason, the county didn't do quite as much. So our files were a little bit more messy. And through that, Jared found that changing some of the boundaries from to match the census data blocks, we have, it's hard to believe, but we have 71 counties, 71 precincts out of the 82 that need to have some revisions. I don't think that really means much about voters, but it's cleaning up the lines. Perhaps he's putting some of the lines more in the center of the road rather than to the edge. And then we get these little strips that are in nobody's precinct. But it could affect voters. I don't have that information for sure. But he's done a ton of work and it's just amazing. And he's not quite complete. So it could end up to be more than 71 precincts, but this is going to make things so much better, so much cleaner. It's really a good thing. And I just can't say enough about how much he has worked and helped and done this. And it's in conjunction with the city, also with Ellettsville. So it's looking really good.
Okay.
With that, he will give me that information. I have what he has, but there could be updated. And then I will attach that to the survey and I'll be able to complete what I need to do by then. I can even do it ahead of time.
Okay.
So I'm very, very happy. There's a part 2 to that. I mean, do you have any questions on that?
I only understand very superficially what you explained to us, and I was wondering if I could stop by your office and maybe go over this in a little more detail with you so I can better understand it. And I'd like to extend that invitation to Shruti and Nicole as well, so we can be fully cognizant of what's going on. Is that going to be a tremendous burden for you, Karen?
No, and this is really just telling the state, this is what we want to do, but we're not doing it yet. So this is just our preliminary deadline. And then when we really get all the census data back to us or through the state, and they do what they need to do, and they're going to do their redistricting, then we start to make the real changes, and that won't be until probably October. But because of what we've done, we will be really on top of it. I mean, this is just going to go so much better. And normally in a normal year, isn't that funny? What is a normal year? But we used to have 6 months to do this. But now, because of COVID and the deadlines and the things that didn't go well with the census, we're down to 6 weeks in the end of the year. So we'll end up, getting this information in October, and then we have to have it done. Before the candidate filing, which is in January. So it's been very stressful and extremely unnerving because you want to do it right. But I'll tell you, Jared has just given me great confidence, and he has been in contact, and so have I, with Stephanie at the state. She has been amazingly helpful, and she is with the Indiana Election Division, and she's in special projects. Once we submit our survey, then we will be assigned either Stephanie or Lori. One's a Democrat, one's a Republican. We won't know which one we will have. It won't matter. They're both amazing. But right now, Stephanie is working with us. And if we don't make this deadline, then if we want to change something, we're at the end of the line. The state says, I don't know if we're going to have time for you. If we have time, we may help you. But if we get this in, they're saying, good job, you've done your work. We will help you. We'll get through this.
Okay. So this actually lays the groundwork for the actual re-precincting to be done later this fall.
Right.
Okay.
And I think the state was pretty smart with this because it forces you to do it. I mean, we have
Start the process. Yeah.
Yes.
No last minute work. I understand.
So now we'll be ready.
Yeah.
But I do have part 2 to this. So in my thinking, so that's the re-precincting will be done according to how Jared has set it up. And it's because of the boundary lines, the census blocks, did they fit with ours or not? We had a couple of them that the state gave us a little warning that we have perhaps a precinct going through a building, splits a building. And it could be an error on their side, or it could be an error on ours. And Jared has the answer to that now, but I don't. But there was 5 of those that could have been that, but that's getting worked through.
Okay.
But on my side, I have 9 precincts out of the 82 that are less than the 600, and now the state is saying we want every precinct to be 600 or more with active voters or less than 2,000. But we don't have to do that because the less than 600 can be grandfathered in. But so I thought, this is a good time. We have 9 of them. Maybe we can, accommodate, we can consolidate. So I went through all of those 9, and they all have problems. Like one is Polk, and there's no way that we'd want to consolidate Polk because it's a big area. It only has like 250 active voters, but that's also a township. We don't want to get rid of a township. And it's a huge amount of area, and it makes sense to keep Polk that way. So I went through all the other ones, and they all have some problem because you'd have to adjoin a precinct to another precinct that is right next to it. But either they're a different county council, or they're the different county commissioner, or there's an issue with everyone, with the exception of 2 of them that are side by side. And oh gosh, that is Bloomington 1 and Bloomington 19. We could actually combine those. They both have, give or take, about 400 active voters. But the problem I see with this, I don't think we even want to do that. And this is absolutely up to the board. Bloomington 1 actually vote, so they have the same congressional, well, everybody has the same congressional. They have the same Senate, same House, same county commissioner, county council, county or city council, school district, they're all the same. But they vote in a different place. So Bloomington 1 votes at Fairview, Bloomington 19 votes at IU. So Bloomington 19 is an IU precinct. And I just don't know, and maybe, I really want your opinion, but do we want to take Bloomington 1 and throw them into the IU voting place? It might not go real well with the voters, or maybe it's going to be fine, but they're used to voting at Fairview along with the other precincts there. So that's the only one that I really could figure out to do. I thought we could get rid of, all right, maybe I shouldn't say get rid of, but we could have absorbed Richland 9 because we only have 10 voters there. But it's a problem because Richland 9 is in the city of Bloomington, and then the rest of Richland is county or town. But everything around that has a different county council, or it just doesn't work. So we can't unless the Ellettsville actually could take it back, and that's not going to happen.
Okay. For my well-being, I think I need to get more detail from you down at Election Central, just so I can be sure that I'm convinced in my mind that voters, well, let me ask you the question. Moving a precinct could be a disruptive voting incident for some voters, correct? We don't know, but it could, someone could say, I was okay with voting at Fairview, but I don't want to go to the university and deal with all that if I have to vote there. Is it possible some voters might find that a deterrent to voting?
See, I think it would, because people that do vote at IU mostly are students, not all of them, but
yeah,
then they live pretty close. So the other ones are not as close. I can tell you where where the boundaries are.
Well, I don't need the boundaries right now, but if there's a possibility that it might deter some people from voting, simply because we moved the election location for them from one school to a university, that raises some concerns in my mind. I'd like to sit down with you for a few minutes just to see if there are other instances of this so that I can summarize it and make sure that it gets to Shruti and Nicole, or all three of us can go over this together. But I just want to be sure that if we're going to make any changes that affect people's willingness to vote, that there's a really good reason to do it.
I absolutely agree. And it's important, particularly with all of the talk that's going around about annexation and then us throwing around words like absorbing and getting rid of, precincts. I think it's going to be important to have this discussion. No, and for Monroe County voters, it's important to understand we just want to do what's right for making sure that everybody knows where they're supposed to vote because they belong to a particular precinct. You might have said this, Ms. Karen, I was looking at something else, but I remember that one where the road to the house split the difference between one precinct and another, and then there wasn't a registered voter in the house. This was something right as I was coming on as clerk, and it was a hot mess, and we had to talk it through. Every decision had ramifications. There was no easy way out, and there's no easy way out. But it's important to me that voters here, we are just trying to make common sense decisions for our precincts. Nothing that would lend to the appearance of trying to disenfranchise voters. That just needs to be very, very clear.
Yeah. So here's the way I would do it. Karen, I'd like to meet with you briefly tomorrow morning if you're going to be in and available, and then I can kind of size the effort for the board and arrange with the members of the board. I'll send out a note tomorrow to meet either Monday or Tuesday at their convenience so we can discuss this, perhaps electronically. It depends on the size and of the task that we have to do, but this will be a work session in order to understand the impact of this redistricting that we have to commit to by the 9th, which is next Wednesday. Does that sound reasonable, Karen?
Yes, it's the 11th, but
11th. Okay.
Yeah. I just do think that city people are not going to want to go to IU if they're not used to doing that. Parking is an issue and there's just other things.
Yeah.
And so I would lean for us, although I don't take a vote or give a vote, but I think it's not going to be as well received. And it would minorly help us, but not really. It's going to be fine either way,
Okay.
them together.
Would the board like to meet as an entity tomorrow? Is that possible, or
It is not for me.
Okay.
Unless Tree would want to be my proxy for tomorrow, I need to be in Indianapolis for legislative business.
Okay.
Tree's giving a thumbs up.
Yeah. Shruti, what's your preference? Would you like to meet as soon as possible, or would you like me to size this and then call a meeting?
Yeah, I think the second, because I'm unfortunately out of town. I'm attending a family wedding until Wednesday.
Till
But
Wednesday. Okay.
Yeah, I'm happy to do anything by phone or Zoom or anything if that's possible.
Okay, absolutely.
Mondays typically are busy for most of us, Mondays and Fridays. I'm going to recommend, if there's going to be something, if we could do it on Tuesday.
All right.
Unless, of course, if you feel strongly about tomorrow and Tree is willing, then I will. I'm fine.
Okay, why don't I do this? Why don't I sit down with Karen? I will size the task, try to summarize it as much as possible for the other members of the board. And there's a huge spider crawling up my desk. And I mean, this thing's $50 size. He just growled at me. Anyway, All right, I will make sure that a good tight summary of this goes out to everyone after I have a chance to sit with Karen. And then we can react electronically to a course of action that the board, okay, does that sound good?
Sounds good.
May I ask a question?
Someone's asked, yes, you have a
Sorry, I
question?
just have a quick question. Karen, you said, interestingly, that there are 9 precincts that are smaller than the 600 active voters. Are there any precincts that are beginning to approach the upper limit of, no? Okay, all right, good.
Okay,
Good question.
okay. Just to assure everyone who's listening, we will do our best to minimize any impact. But we do what the law says we have to do too. So Karen, I'll meet with you tomorrow at your convenience, and we'll set that up after this meeting.
Okay, great.
Okay, terrific. Thank you so much for that great summary. Now, there
I
were
do-
a couple of additional items that you wanted to go over, Karen.
Yes, so I found out, this isn't like pressing, it isn't on a deadline, but I found out from the state that we actually have 22 precincts that have a different name in the state GIS than is in the SVRS listing. And the state is wanting us to correct that. I found out that I do need an order from the commissioners, and I have contacted them, and they are going to be working on that, checking out the legalities and what needs to be done. They're very minor discrepancies. I'm telling you, minor. But so what it is all of Richland, they say Richland, SVRS says Richland 1, but the state GIS says Richland 01. So that's pretty easy. We just need to eliminate it.
Okay,
But when it comes to Bloomington 1, Bloomington 1 is Bloomington 1 on both. So I don't really know how it got different. It isn't consistent. So I'm working on that. I just wanted you to know about it. I don't know if I need your approval, or I just need the approval, or I think I just need the order from the commissioners. And I got an email back from Julie this morning that they will respond back to that when they get their information that they need. So maybe that's just an update or letting you know, and I can keep you informed on that. I think that's it on that. And then
okay.
I also just wanted to say too, that we were graced with the visit of Honorable Secretary of State Holly Sullivan. She came to Election Central on Monday and had a tour of the place. She wanted to see that. She is making her rounds to all 92 counties, has completed about a third of them. And it was just very nice to see her here. And she is working very hard to get to know the counties. And that was her objective.
Okay. Did she notice how cramped our quarters were?
We did talk about that. Yes.
Okay, good. All right, and can you also tell us about Ivy Tech?
Oh, yes, almost forgot that one. So I had a request to do some voter registration training on from the League of Women Voters. And so actually on Tuesday, I had a training at Ivy Tech. I had just a couple from the group, but mostly they were from Ivy Tech, and they're really wanting, they have several events that are coming up already in August and September that they want to be able to register their students. So they did a great job, really interacted well. I could tell that they're really excited about registering people, and they learned a few things about election. And when I teach the class, I always give them a little bit more than just voter registration. I like to give them a little bit more ideas what goes on with the election. And there was a comment afterwards, sometimes we're so used to doing what we're doing, we don't realize what's new to other people. But some of the really simple things, I was told during the class at the very end how much they appreciated knowing. Things like, we never handle a ballot alone. I always have the other party with me. They didn't know that. So, I mean, I can't even take that ballot and walk across the room. I have to have the other party with me. We have a ballot room that has a lock on it that has, we need a D and an R, a Democrat and a Republican to get in there. And just things like that, and how much we work together. The person said it just gave him so much more confidence to see the integrity of the election, you know, because, and I encourage them as well as anybody, if you have doubts, you really should work early voting, because you see it hands-on how much we do the right thing all the time. And we're trying very hard. Of course, it's for the integrity of the election, but also it's to protect the staff too, because if I am never alone with the ballot, you can never accuse me of doing something. And we want to do everything not only above board, but above any reproach of thinking, you know, wow, could have something happened? So I thought that was really good. And I just enjoy hearing them and seeing them excited about election and voting and registering people. And so I have another one scheduled, and probably a third one. I don't have a date for that, but one coming up. And so if anybody really wants to be trained, I have another one here, August 10th at Election Central, 1:30. And the very best way is to contact the league. They set up the amount of people. Because of COVID, we have to keep a limit of how many people can come to the class, but it's a good time. It's really good to see these people. I love it.
Terrific, terrific. And I think it's important that they understand the emphasis we put on election integrity. Did you mention to them that our voting machines are never, ever put online?
I usually do, but I don't think I said it this time.
Okay.
So that's a good point. I will remember to say that.
Yeah,
But
I think that's one of the things that impressed me when I had my first tour. Okay, terrific.
Thank you.
Is there anything else, Karen?
I think I'm done.
Okay, thank you so much for that great report. Is there any other new business?
No, sir.
Nicole?
I have nothing. The only thing that I will say with respect to item D, where you would announce the next election board meeting, because we don't have the schedule yet for budgets, I don't know when we will be meeting. So I would typically at this meeting ask if we could use the budget hearing as our September meeting, but because I don't have a date, I can't say that.
Okay. But
so
okay, but that will be still a public meeting.
Correct. I'm just saying that, so I would have asked for that in lieu of September 2nd, that we meet at the budget hearings, but I don't have a date to give you. So I'm not sure how to address that.
All right. We'll have to wait until we get enough information to be able to make that decision, in my mind. But unless people hear differently from us, expect us on the first Thursday of September. And we will make sure we use all the media available to get that message out to people. Now I would like to open the floor to any public comments. I saw Ralph, I think, had her hand up. Anyone who would like can chime in now. Ralph, did you have a comment?
I just realized that I was sitting here nodding in response to things that Karen said about the voter registration training, and then I realized nobody could see me, so I gave a thumbs up to her.
Oh, okay.
It was a really impressive presentation, and I think really connected well with the people at the session.
Yeah, that's terrific. That's terrific. It's great to see the epiphany that people have when Karen goes through the explanation of all the things we do to keep our election safe. It's quite enriching to see. Are there any comments from anyone who is listening? Anyone in the audience? Anyone who would like to speak up? I see B Square has their hand up. Yes, David.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I heard at one point during the meeting, and I was sort of drifting in and out of the meeting trying to pay attention to a lot of different things, but I heard at one point the phrase something along the lines of, so that we don't have to notice a meeting. And that caught my attention because I am a little bit obsessed about public notice for public meetings, and I think some of you probably know that. And when you say that, you know, this is a good way to do things so that we don't have to notice the meeting, it makes it sound like you're trying to hold a meeting out of public view, which I know is absolutely not the intent here. So I'm just hoping that before you recess, you could lay out maybe a ballpark idea of when this meeting will reconvene, and maybe just review again why this approach is being taken as opposed to doing a public notice of a fresh, separate special meeting. And, you know, based on past practice, I'm guessing that as soon as it's known when this meeting will reconvene, there's going to be some kind of publicity from the election division, emails and whatnot, even if it's not a formal public notice. So that was just my comment. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, Mr. Dave, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Mr. David, let me, since I'm the one who made that comment, let me take responsibility for saying it the way that I did. And I'll give you an example. If we had to all come together in Karen's office to look at the signatures on an absentee ballot application to see if it's been challenged, then we're not advertising to the paper that we're all doing that, but we are all together, you know, as an election board. If we've recessed, we're not together inappropriately, we can all be together and make a decision on that. And so what I meant by that was, I know that I've asked the election board to all come together on Wednesday for that work session. So we don't have to notice that because we're on the commissioners meeting, and because we recessed, then Karen doesn't have to let the media know that the election board is going to be together at that meeting. We recessed, we did not adjourn. So there certainly was not anything untoward.
No.
We do not have secret meetings. I don't even know where I would fit a secret meeting in on my schedule. I'm just going to tell you the truth.
Yeah, well,
So,
I mean, I apologize if in any way I conveyed the idea that there was some nefarious intent. It caught my ear, and the way you described it, it helped clarify sort of the factual circumstances. My understanding was somehow that the election board was going to meet after the commissioners said whatever they said to then eventually make some kind of separate decision. But it sounds like the date and time of the reconvening of this meeting is known, and it will be at the commissioner's work session. Is that
right? But
okay?
It's not. I'm not formally sending out notice. And it's here, Mr. David. I'll tell you. Here's how this happened. I, as a new clerk, got spanked when the election board and I met in the commissioner's office for a work session. We were trying to look at a satellite location right after I became clerk. 2 weeks later, I had to oversee my first presidential election. I didn't know what I didn't know, which was I invited the election board to accompany me in the, I wanted to be transparent and sit in there with the commissioners and talk through trying to get this satellite. And I got spanked by one of the commissioners at the time because I had not noticed publicly that the election board was going to be together. The media was in that meeting. We were all together. I wasn't hiding it, but I didn't know what I didn't know. So now I know to make a motion to recess. And then if we don't notify the paper, we're still coming together, but there's nothing untoward about the fact that we're coming together. We're not trying to get over on the public in any type of way.
I really appreciate the clarification. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Are there any additional comments from anyone in the audience? Any listeners? Okay, not hearing any, I would be open to a motion.
Okay,
To-
before we make that motion, I just got a very sweet reminder to point out, Mr. David, no votes are taken when we meet. If we should meet, there are no votes taken on anything. You know, if we've recessed instead of adjourned. All
Got it.
votes are public.
Understood.
Okay, now, Mr. Hal, I am happy to make a motion to recess this meeting.
Okay, do we have a second?
I second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we recess subject to the recall of the chair. Could I have a roll call vote, please? Trudy,
Aye.
Nicole,
Aye.
and Hal says aye. So we are recessed subject to the recall of the chair. Thanks, everybody. Good meeting.
Thank you.